Hello, and welcome back to Magnetic Masculinity Podcast, where we provide men with practical tools and strategies to bridge the gap between achievement and fulfillment so that they can live their most magnetic lives. Today, we're connecting Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint with relationships. And a few things that we will go over is overview of Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint, in case if anybody who's joining might not know what is it that we're talking about. And with this, I also would suggest to listen to episode 13, because that's where we started to go into it and explain it a bit more deeper. Also, we will talk about how it can be applied to relationships and the impact of Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint in relationships when it comes to communication, emotional health, and conflict resolution. So maybe let's start with diving into what is Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint.
Yeah, great. This is exciting. I love working with relationships. I think that we all deserve to have the most delicious, fun, magnetic, inspiring, connected relationships. And that's one of the main focuses of my coaching is I work a lot with men, but I also work a lot with couples. And so this is really exciting because it's like my two favorite things coming together. So in order to begin, we will review the Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint. And this is basically just a formula or a model that I've created over the years after years of working with high-performing men and decades of studying human behavior. So this is sort of your blueprint or your fast track to experience your most magnetic life or your full potential or enlightenment or whatever outcome appeals to you. And the outcome of magnetic masculinity is confidence, clarity, emotional mastery, vulnerability, skillful at relationships, at creating and sustaining relationships, more time in flow state, inspiring to others. It's bridging that gap between achievement and fulfillment so that you never have to look back on your life and wonder if you missed out. So the Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint is the formula that leads to that magnetic masculinity I just described. It involves two components. One, authentic alignment, which I'll go into, and two, your vehicle of consciousness, which again are not absolute truths, they're just metaphors. And having that metaphorical alignment or that framework allows us to more quickly diagnose and repair what's missing or what's wrong in your life. So, authentic alignment is who you are versus who you think you're supposed to be. It's having clarity on what your authentic soul wants, needs, boundaries, and values are. Not what your parents wanted you to be and what you think that will get you approval, not what your religion or your culture or your country or your gender told you that you have to be in order to be good enough and be a man and fit in, but what is actually your deep soul calling? What do you love? What lights you up? Another way to look at it is, when you own a company or you're running a company and you have your mission, vision, values, you know what aligns with your company's goal and vision and what does not. Yet most men, when I ask them, tell me about your authentic wants. What are your deepest desires? What are your needs? And what are your boundaries? What are your core values? They don't really know. And that's totally normal. But that's why that's one of those foundational pieces that I like to dive into, because then we can look at different areas of our life to assess which ones line up with our wants, needs, boundaries, and values, and which ones don't. What needs and values or what areas of our life are aligned with our values and what areas of our life are not aligned with our values. And who in our life, what needs can we meet? What needs can our partner meet? What needs can our friends meet? What needs can our family meet? What needs, so that we're constantly sort of filling our bucket. So authentic alignment, that is one of the cornerstones of the Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint. The second one is what I call your vehicle of consciousness. So we are here in this human experience. We know that energy or consciousness, pick your metaphor, are sort of the fundamental of reality. So while your unit of energy is experiencing your body in this vehicle of consciousness, what we want to make sure is that you are piloting that vehicle of consciousness, because it's often said that 90 to 95% of our perceptual awareness, the thoughts we think, the habits we create, the choices we make, and the patterns we experience are based on subconscious programming, often from before the age of 7-ish. So when we're kind of running totally on autopilot or from the subconscious, we're not really in charge and we're not really exercising our free will. So in order to understand this more multidimensional model for reality, I've broken down our systems in this vehicle of consciousness, this body, this avatar, into different systems. So often you hear in yogic studies and things, mind, body, spirit, you hear things like that. But what does that mean? How can we practically apply that in our everyday life to get results? And that's what this model is helping us do. So in your vehicle of consciousness, your brain is the supercomputer. So the brain is the computer and it's running a lot of hardware and we want to make sure that the hardware is good and that the drivers are updated. We want to make sure it has great software. It doesn't have too many tabs open, that the electricity running through it is nice and clean. And as I mentioned before, if 90 to 95% of our choices are subconscious, they're not even necessarily authentically aligned for us, the first thing we want to do is make sure that that computer is not only running efficiently from a physical standpoint, it has a lot of energy, it has the right nutrients, you're not having brain fog, you're not having burnout, but we also want to really become empowered in how we program that software and remove any software that no longer serves us. Maybe some software is there, but it just needs a little OS update, and how to install new software so that all of those subconscious programs that are running are really in alignment with our authentic alignment and just running perfectly to help us experience our most magnetic lives. So that's your computer. Your body is the engine in this vehicle or car. And the body requires proper maintenance. We want it to have a full tank of gas. We would prefer that it has premium fuel. I like cars a lot. I like expensive sports cars. And the cars that I drive require premium fuel. So a lot of the high performing people I work with are like those high performing cars that I like to drive. We need premium fuel. There's nothing wrong with regular fuel, but it's not what a really fantastic car needs premium fuel. The better it is. And a lot of men I know will put, premium fuel in their cars. They'll treat their bicycles, their fishing equipment, their guns, whatever it is, they'll treat it perfectly, but they think less about what goes into their own body. We want to make sure all the fluids are topped up. So we want to make sure we have good fluids. We want to make sure that all the different components are running properly. And if we have the computer running perfectly and the body, the engine is working fantastically, it's been properly maintained, and it has a full tank of premium fuel, this vehicle is not going to run at its full potential or at all without the battery. And your heart is the battery. Your heart is also sort of how we connect to the World Wide Web. So your heart is the connection to your intuition, to the unified field, or the database, the ether, as physicists would call it, or the Akashic records, as mystics have called it. And unfortunately, because we're currently evolving out of the emotional dark ages, a lot of us have not been taught how to get those heart needs met. And the number one neurological, biological, physiological, scientifically inarguable need of the human species is love and belonging. And how we receive that and how we sort of send that signal out and what we get back and how we connect with others, because we're an interdependent species, and how we connect with ourself, our authentic self, is what's going to determine how charged that battery is. But now say you have a fully charged battery, and you have a full tank of gas and the software is running great, or you're at least able to maintain it as it goes along and remove anything that you don't want, emotions are your navigation system. So emotions are a very helpful tool that guide us and inform us. They contain priceless information, going back to our authentic alignment, that inform us of our wants, needs, boundaries, and values. They inform us where our wounds are so that we can do the healing work, so that over time we become more stress resilient and trigger proof. So I have a trigger protocol I help people go through when they're feeling that emotional reactivity. And really learning to become emotionally masterful, increasing that social intelligence through the heart, increasing that emotional intelligence through with our emotional navigation system, and getting really curious and skillful about your emotions. And this is big in relationships, because if we emotionally invalidate ourselves, or as I often say, we're all in this together. It's not men's fault. It's not women's fault, but women have raised men. So we're all in this together. I think there's some accountability there. We've basically cut off men's emotional legs in childhood. Then we put them in emotionally based relationships. And we're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you walk up the stairs? Well, they can't walk up the stairs because we cut their legs off. And we told them, be strong, be tough, don't be a pussy, don't be a sissy, boss up, no crying, be a man, go provide. You know, we haven't taught them. Men are often given 2 crayons to color with of their emotions. They're given anger, unless anger wasn't allowed. Then they're just going to become unself-aware of their anger and create a blind spot, which is worse. Oh, and happiness or stress. They're not given all these different crayons of understanding, like jealousy and envy and hopelessness or hope or joy or bliss. And as I often say, emotions are a package deal. So when we're forced to shut that emotional navigation system down, and also because we're sort of afraid of the emotions that make us feel really icky, like shame or guilt or not good enough, we shut that emotional navigation system down to protect ourselves. And again, this is normal. There's nothing wrong with this. This is really common in humanity at this snapshot in evolution. But this is something that we want to work through as we evolve out of the emotional dark ages. And it's a really important part of the Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint. And again, how we're tying this into relationships is, okay, so let's go back to our first one. Magnetic masculinity, right? Not your conditioning, but your magnetic masculinity is who you are. It's removing all those layers of expectations and social comparison and who you thought you had to be in childhood to get the approval of those around you, and figuring out what actually lights you up, your authentic alignment. Now, part of that is self-awareness, doing parts work. We get into that in other episodes. And part of it, again, is that ongoing curiosity or ever unfolding clarity, because we're not just one person and we stay that way forever. But it's sort of being able to at least look at what our authentic wants, needs, boundaries, and values are. Because when we go into a relationship, if we don't have a clue of who we are, what we want, and what we value, we're going to be going into relationships based on chemistry rather than compatibility. And while that's very normal, I assure you that's suboptimal. And what often happens is either A, we misrepresent who we are. We call that courting or trying to please or impress people. I like to call it false advertising and manipulating. So we pretend, oh, you like jazz music? Oh, I like jazz music. And we start acting as if however we think that person wants us to act in order for them to approve of us. And again, while that's normal, I think it's a lot more helpful to have clarity on what it is we want, what it is that how we receive what we want to have our needs met. Otherwise, it's kind of like, this is what relationships often look like. People go on a date and they get chemistry, which we could get into another episode of why that chemistry actually happens and why it's often sometimes with people that we're very aligned with, and sometimes it's with what is familiar to us, which might not actually be what's in alignment for us. But we get together, we talk, we get all that chemistry, we get all that oxytocin because of the thoughts that we're thinking about them and how they are going to meet our needs that we might not even be aware of. And we're like, you like pizza? Oh my God, pizza. You like traveling? No way, me too. Oh my God, this person's so hot. Let's get together. And that's great. And what often happens, imagine you are trying to hire somebody for a job in your company. And I work a lot with entrepreneurs. So this is an example I use a lot. And I say, imagine you're trying to hire somebody in your company and you're not really sure on the direction of your company. This is your wants, needs, boundaries, values, your mission, vision, values for the company. So you're like, can't really explain where this company is going or like what's really good about it or what we want, or like I'm not like super clear on what we're passionate about. You know, it wouldn't be as helpful when you're hiring. But let's add another layer on that. Let's say you're bringing somebody in and they're a really good salesperson, super outgoing personality, high social intelligence, high emotional intelligence. They're super extroverted. They're really good at sales. And you take them and you put them in an accounting role. And they have to do spreadsheets all day. But what you really needed was an HR director. It's lunacy. Yet we do that constantly in relationships. And then another layer on top of that, say the person you're hiring for the job, they're like, okay, so how do I do well at this job? You're like, I don't know. Okay. So like, you know, how do I excel at this job? Well, you have to make us happy. Okay, what does that look like? I don't really know, because I don't really know the direction of this company and I don't really know what I need you to do, but you're definitely going to get in trouble if you don't do a good job. So this is kind of what's happening in relationships when we don't at least have some sort of clarity on our authentic wants, needs, boundaries, and values. It's harder to find a truly compatible fit because what we want in a relationship is not, well, I'd be really good at sales, but I'm willing to be an accountant because I love you. Because then those people are not both getting their needs met. It should be more like, wait, what? I hate spreadsheets. I don't want to do spreadsheets. I want to go out and do sales. No way. I love doing spreadsheets. Oh, you do? That's great. Oh, yeah, in sales. So could you do that job? And then it's just this sort of like synergy of, yes, that's what I want to receive. And that's what I want to receive. And that's what I want to give. And here's what I can't stand cooking, but I so value good food. I love cooking. What are and then we look at, when I work with couples, we look at their wants, needs, boundaries, and values in different areas of their life. And we look at how can we meet each other's needs? What needs can the person meet on their own? What needs can they meet socially? What needs can they meet wherever they in at work or with family? Because here's the thing about those needs. Not only are they helpful for our authentic alignment, but needs must be met. We will either meet those needs directly in a healthy, mutually beneficial, win-win way, or we will become cranky, resentful, manipulative, passive aggressive, frustrated, stuck, withdrawn, needy, whatever our coping mechanisms are. So part of that is just owning what our needs are and saying, I'm going to find healthy ways to meet those needs from other people that are like, yes, that is something I would love to exchange with you. It's often told, which I think is partially true in spirituality, that everything you need is within you. And while that is partially true, and on one level and in certain levels of consciousness, that is absolutely true. And while we are in a human experience, in that vehicle of consciousness, these bodies are wired to be an interdependent species. We're not just born as babies and like, okay, I've got everything I need. I'm out. I'm on my own. Bye. We are an interdependent pack species. We've just created a more separate reality over time. So when we have more of that clarity on our authentic wants, needs, boundaries, and values, and we have that emotional navigation system online, we know what we need to charge our heart battery. We don't have old software telling us, she doesn't appreciate you, nobody likes you, she should know what you're thinking, I shouldn't have to tell her. We don't have software running that's telling us old nonsense things. And our emotional navigation system is constantly informing us of, again, those ever-changing wants, needs, boundaries, and values. And we learn how to fill our cup. Relationships can become magnetic and fun and sexy and exciting and safe and one of the most delicious experiences we can have while we're on the planet.
Can you talk a bit more on how Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint could be applied to relationships from the standpoint of any men listening who are not in a relationship yet and they're looking, and also when it comes to men listening who are in a relationship, who might have thoughts of what if we are not, like what if I now go through this or I haven't looked at Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint and I learned certain things, like is there still hope?
Yes, that's great. Those are both great questions. So let's take our single men first. So men, if you're listening and you have not yet found your delicious, delightful, soulmate, deep relationship, I got you. You deserve it. You can find it. There is absolutely a woman out there who will love exactly and specifically what flavor of the buffet you are. That's an example I use that I heard somewhere that I've adapted a little bit over time, where it's like, you don't have to try to be vanilla or chocolate to fit in with everybody. You might be like, I don't eat ice cream nowadays, but I used to like peanut butter chocolate chip. So part of our job is to try different flavors of the buffet and not be like, oh, I think that person would like bubblegum ice cream. I don't know who would like bubblegum ice cream, to be fair, but there is people out there that like bubblegum ice cream. So I have to get rid of my chocolate. I want to try to hide my chocolate chunks and get rid of my peanut butter and pretend to be. What you want to do, again, is to find that authentic alignment, because there is somebody out there who's going to be like, what? Peanut butter chocolate? This is the most delicious, delightful, amazing flavor I have ever tasted. It's not that there's anything wrong with bubblegum or vanilla or chocolate or strawberry. So first of all, we want to know what flavor of ice cream we are so that we're not misrepresenting ourselves and saying, oh, yes, I'm bubblegum. And then somebody tries us and they're like, well, this kind of tastes like peanut butter chocolate. I signed up for bubblegum, right? Because that's lying and deceiving and false advertising and misalignment. We call that dating. So we want to be able to be comfortable being really authentic with who we are, and remembering that not everybody is going to like your flavor, and that's okay, because again, you want to find that woman who you're like, wait, what? You love sitting at home on Friday nights, reading to each other. Oh, and you dislike this thing, and oh, we're aligned on this, we're aligned on that, and it's not going to be, I don't feel worthy, so hopefully 1/3 and 1/3 equals 1. That's codependent relationships. That's another topic. But we want it to be 1 + 1 = 10. That's the relationship math we want to go for. And it doesn't mean, I just want to be clear, this does not mean you have to be perfect. You have to be your best, perfect self to be in a relationship. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, some of our deepest healing should be done within the container of a relationship, because there are relational wounds or relational traumas, and those are very great to build within a relationship model, because that's like the most safe place for them to heal. But what I am saying is that you be authentic about where you are at that moment and what exactly you're looking for, which involves a little self-inquiry, right? It's like, how do I receive love? There's different ways that I break this down when I work with men, trying to help them step into a relationship, which I'm very successful at. Or to your point, if somebody's already in a relationship and they've, lost connection over time, or they don't have as much sacred sexuality as they used to, or they just feel lonely, frustrated, misunderstood, and like something is missing, going through this exercise together could be so exciting. It's like studying each other. Because I think personally that being in a relationship, especially like a marriage or a permanent commitment, nothing's permanent, a long-term commitment, whatever that looks like to you, I think that that means taking the other person's wants, needs, boundaries, and values as equally important to your own. And that involves studying your partner. A lot of us are not self-aware. Your partner might not know their authentic wants, needs, boundaries, and values. So I have like different workbooks and things that I help couples go through, and we find out like, what would you like more of? Not, okay, well, I have to do the dishes a couple times a week so that you don't feel like you do the dishes. I mean, what can you give each other that you're just going to feel like your bucket is overflowing? Like that emotional navigation system is like, whoo, finally tuned in. That heart battery is charged. You've got a full tank of gas. And you're like overflowing. I mean, you're like, you feel like a Ferrari or whatever your favorite dream car is. So whether you're single or in a relationship, this blueprint, and regardless what gender you are on, anywhere on any gender spectrum, this blueprint can be very not only helpful, but fun. And when I work with men, I've worked a lot with men who experience the desire for infidelity. And when we break it down, it's not actually the other women they desire. It's just a need that they're getting met somehow that's not getting met in a healthy way. But when we create a relationship where you're like, you have clarity on what you want and what lights you up and what makes you feel good, and you're willing to ask your partner for it and vice versa, there's nothing more delicious that there is out there. And most of it is for free, because most of it is words or touch or whatever it is. Like if I tell my partner, you are the handsomest, smartest, most incredible man I've ever met. I appreciate you. I was thinking when I was making our delicious, organic, made from scratch dinner tonight, how grateful I am for all of these groceries that you bought working all day. Like, thank you. I feel so supported. What can I do for you? And if I've been doing something where I don't feel like I'm getting one of my needs met, I'll just ask for it. Hey, I'll ask my husband, can you tell me I look beautiful today, please? Tell me something you think looks pretty about me. Do you think I look pretty in this dress? And in that case, I'll say, the answer is yes. And I'll tell him exactly what I want. Or I'll say, could I please have more appreciation for walking the dogs in the morning when you go play pickleball? Because I really want more appreciation for it. Because what actually happens in relationships is we sit there, we're like, okay, I am going to go to work, I'm going to pay the mortgage, I'm going to do this or that. And my partner, they will do X, Y, and Z. And we start creating scripts for each other in our mind movie. We don't give our partner the script. In fact, sometimes we don't even know what's on it. We haven't even assessed if they're the appropriate person to play that role. And then we get disappointed if they don't play the role the way we want them to. And then we get frustrated because they're off script and they're not doing what they're supposed to. The other person's doing that to you. Both of you are not getting your needs met that you probably can't even articulate that you want met. Couples expect each other to read each other's minds. And then they both get their emotional bank account or their energy or their love bank account gets lower and lower and lower and lower. It's in overdraft. They're bouncing checks and you can't make withdrawals. But if you're constantly depositing into your partner's account and you know them and you're always curious about them and you're always curious about yourself and you're always revisiting. And, my partner and I, this weekend, we have Sacred Saturdays where we do no phones. We do nothing but connect and collaborate. We meditate independently. Then we come together. We do a kiss meditation. We read to each other. We meet any physical or emotional needs or mental needs. We have stimulating conversations. We go for walks. We also do things like, I'm like, hey, is there anything on your mind that pissed you off this week? Is there anything that you did that you feel like I didn't give you enough appreciation, admiration, or acknowledgement or acceptance for? And whatever he says, I'm like, great, thank you. What else? And vice versa. And we create that safe place for each other to just be fully authentic, fully present, and honest about what we want, what we need, what we value, and continually realigning and seeing what that's going to look like in our relationship. We do things like a praise bath, which is just like sitting down and being like, okay, I'm going to tell you everything that I love about you, everything you do that I appreciate, how it makes me feel. And we do things like that for each other.
Can you touch a bit more on how to distinguish the magnetic masculinity blueprint that you have or that you're in relationship versus conditioned? How does conditioned looks like when it comes to relationship or even looking for a relationship?
Well, how to tell whether I actually have like a worksheet about this where like you can ask yourself. I'll sometimes have clients for like a whole week, every 15 minutes. I'm like, you could take 5, 10, 20 years or 5 lifetimes to work this out. But if you want to just get it done like a boss, here's like some fast tracks. Like here's some tools we can just get this done. And I will have them reflect in the moment of this list I have that includes things like, so if you're feeling, now, we're multidimensional beings, so there can be more than one reason you're tired, but if you're feeling drained, so there's a difference between tired and drained. And then you can ask yourself, again, this is in some of my multidimensional health models, this is more the relationship model, but is it the computer that's drained? Like, have I not had enough glucose to fuel my brain? Do I not have enough water? Is it my heart battery? Is it the empty tank of gas, aka I've been eating fries and beer and nothing's giving me energy and all my energy is being used to digest food? Is it my emotional navigation system? But within the context of relationships, I can tell in your conditioning is you feel lonely, frustrated, misunderstood, like something is missing, drained. You might feel disconnected, agitated, easily triggered. You might start speaking more unkindly, becoming either aggressive or passive aggressive, withdrawn, depending on what your attachment style is. You might become more and more withdrawn, or you might become more and more needy, or you might just feel, yeah, I mean, when you're in your magnetic masculinity, which is your birthright, which is your natural state of being, you're going to know it because you're going to feel fulfilled and engaged, and you're going to feel seen, heard, appreciated. Everybody has some unique needs, but there are core needs of the human species. And those are things like love and belonging, like we talked about. And then appreciation, acceptance, admiration, adoration. So we want to be accepted. Hey, I'm accepted even when I'm in a cranky mood. I was feeling very frustrated yesterday about a project I'm working on and this social media thing I'm trying, and I was feeling very frustrated and I was cranky and I was stomping my feet around. My husband was like, yes, your emotions are okay. They're welcome here. I accept you. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm impacting. He's like, no. You taught me this. I accept you when you're like that. So accepted, appreciated. Like, hey, I make every single thing in our house from scratch. I juice every day. I make ketchup from scratch. Everything is organic. I know every ingredient that goes into everything. We all want to be appreciated. We say, oh, we don't need any external validation. That can be true on some levels and in certain spiritual states that I've definitely attained in my life. And who doesn't want to be appreciated? Like, thank you. A lot of men tell me they feel unappreciated for going to work and what they provide for the family because they're just constantly having what they're not doing pointed out, which is the more emotional stuff. And admiration. I'm sorry. We all want to, oh no, we're humble. Oh no, I don't need any of that. No. We all want to be admired. Like, you are gorgeous. I love you. Yeah, I don't care. You are rocky road. You got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's a little bit of a crazy flavor, but it's delicious and I love it. Right? So we want to be admired, adored, appreciated, and acknowledged. Admired, adored, appreciated, and acknowledged. Yeah, and acknowledged is feeling heard, feeling seen. Even if we're not in agreement, it's, hey, I don't feel like you prioritize me in this way or that way. And instead of just becoming defensive, it's like, whoa, I hear you. I don't experience that. I feel very triggered and defensive right now, but I acknowledge that. I don't want you to feel that way. And I'm sorry you've been feeling that way. Right? It's feeling seen, feeling heard. A lot of men don't feel seen. When they tell me they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel acknowledged, they don't feel appreciated. So it's meeting some of those core needs and then figuring out what your own unique needs are on top of that. But those are like pretty basic ones that every human being wants. That I've honestly worked with couples. I have one couple who are in couples therapy for 19 years, off and on. They've been fired by 3 couples therapists and worked with other couples coaches. And the things that we worked on were so simple that it's almost ridiculous that we miss them. I have lots of couples that have been struggling for a long time. And when they're done, they're like, wait, what? Like they can't wait to get home and be together. And they're just like, this is so easy. I'm like, yeah, when you understand it, it's really quite easy. It's not always easy because we still get triggered. We still get activated. We still get frustrated. We still, make our partner's behavior mean things. So there's little tools that we can apply. Like one of the ones I've mentioned in other episodes is always asking ourselves, am I using my words as medicine or poison? And that's the words how I speak to myself and how I speak to my partner, my family, everybody in my life. And even if our partner is not able to show up in their highest alignment in that moment and they are spewing poison at us, it's trying as much as you can to make that conscious choice not to poison them, and also having the accountability of what we're making our partner's behavior mean. So also having that radical compassion, but having that radical accountability, like we've talked about in other episodes, where we're also like, hey, I can take something little that my husband does. I can make it mean he doesn't care about me. I can make it mean he doesn't consider me. I can make it mean I'm unsafe. I can make it mean all kinds of things. And my certain parts of my conditioning will try to do so. But if I pause for a moment, I take a few deep breaths, I follow one of my own protocols, and I look for evidence of the opposite of that, I'm like, whoa, I could find 9,000 pieces of evidence that I am safe, that he does value me, that he does appreciate me, that, whatever it is. So it's just this constant curiosity, compassion, accountability, and clarity, and curiosity. And for me at least, following the Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint in this term of relationships is I'm sure there's many helpful models out there. It's just the model that I have created and chosen, that I've had a lot of success helping people experience their most magnetic lives individually and in the container of relationships, either repairing old relationships, making them better than they even were when they met each other. I've absolutely helped couples experience that. Fixing a marriage that they're struggling with, or meeting, aligning with, and sustaining a relationship with their soulmate.
So maybe
but first having that foundational relationship with yourself and having clarity on your own boundaries and piloting your vehicle of consciousness and having awareness of your battery and your emotions, and not making the other person responsible to do everything for us, but just deciding in what ways can we mutually just fill each other's bank accounts, so we're just like, woo.
So maybe to follow along with that conditioned versus magnetic, can you talk a bit more on differences when it comes to to also reiterate the importance of magnetic masculinity blueprint in the relationships, about what's the difference when you are in that magnetic or where you're not, when it comes to communication or emotional well-being, or even conflict resolution?
Well, conscious conflict, I read a book. I will, if you remind me, I'll tell you the name and you can add it in the show notes. I think it's really great. There's a few that I recommend for couples. But it talks about how conflict in a relationship is actually amazing. It's really, really helpful. It's like mutual expansion. And it's also like a KPI that there's something more that we can get to know about each other or about ourselves, or that we're about to heal. So conscious conflict done with compassion and accountability is actually a catalyst for deeper connection. So first of all, we don't want to think that having any conflict is a bad thing like I used to believe. That's what I used to believe. And the other aspect of this, if people go back and refer to our episode about parts work, remembering that when we're in our authentic self or one of our authentic selves, like the dad, the CEO, all these different parts of us, the inner child, whatever parts of us, we want to know if these are our authentic parts or one of our conditioned parts, like these little lost boys that were created in childhood to protect us. They might be like a little protector personality who's like, stick them up. You can't, I'm not going to let you get to me, and who kind of puts his dukes out when he feels wounded and tries to protect our little vulnerable part. And we want over time to reduce the amount of time that we're talking part to part. And we want to speak more heart to heart, because if both people are activated is not the time for communication, because it's not going to go well. You're going to be in that circle of like, you did, he said, she said, I don't. So following the trigger protocol can be very helpful, and just remembering whenever we can, or if one of us is activated, the other person can be curious and be like, it's okay, I got you. Like, what are you going through right now? I'm here with you. But if both people, and then the one person, if they're in a hostile takeover from one of their parts, or they're unconscious, as it's often called, they're in one of those programs, one of those old programs from childhood. They're not present. They're not in their higher self. They're defensive, withdrawn, agitated, whatever it is. Then whichever one of us first can come back to connection, try to come back to connection. And remember that when we're activated is not the time to communicate. We want to connect before we correct. And we want to remember that we're on the same team. We want to remember that everybody gets triggered or activated, sometimes myself included. And that's normal. And that there are tools and strategies that we can use to work through it. And accepting that we're going to make some mistakes, and that our partner is going to make some mistakes.
And what's the difference between conditioned versus magnetic when it comes to emotional health, which is quite important in relationships?
Well, if you're mostly in your conditioning and your emotional, like you're being the man you thought you were supposed to be. Look, I am a good, honest lawyer. I do not want any praise from anybody. I am a this, I am a that. And we're not like open, like we're not, that emotional navigation system is kind of shut down. We've shut down those emotions to cope with what we expect men to be in society. Then it's just a lot harder to give or receive that connection in the container of a relationship. So when you're in your conditioning, it's sort of like being in a state of unsafety, or feeling not good enough, or misalignment. And that is a harder energy to create connection with in the container of a relationship. But when you are in your magnetic masculinity, you have that confidence, that clarity, which again is not clarity that you are perfect. It's clarity that I'm a work in progress, and that's okay. Here are things I'm great at. Here are some of my blind spots that somebody made me aware of, maybe even my wife, and then you learn to eat your shit sandwiches and be like, yep, you're right. It happens a lot at my house, both ways. And we can hold that with each other without shame collapsing or, lashing out at each other. But I think that it's just more, again, it's more like 1 + 1 = 10, rather than going into a relationship being like, here I am, I'm an accountant, let me do all your spreadsheets. But really your heart's like, I hate accounting, spreadsheets are terrible. And she's like, good, I want an accountant. But really what she wanted was a salesperson. Maybe you are a salesperson. Or another couple of examples I use, metaphors that I use often, are like, you're buying a minivan, what you wanted was a Porsche. Or you bought a duck and what you wanted was a horse. There's nothing wrong with the duck, but if walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and lays eggs like a duck, it's probably a duck, unless we're false advertising. And then we're like, look, I'm a duck. Haha. I'm quacking, I'm waddling, I'm laying eggs. Look, I have a big bill. Look at me, I'm a duck because you said you wanted a duck. But really inside, our soul is like, I'm not a duck. I'm a horse and I want to go galloping through that field, but I can't because I'm pretending to be a duck for you. And now I'm going to start to resent you. I'm going to start to feel agitated. I'm going to start to feel frustrated. You see?
With this, like, what are some of the things to keep in mind, even like when it comes to navigating your own magnetic masculinity blueprint, but then if you add another person, what are some of the things or some of the complexities that can come up or something that needs to be kept in mind, especially if it's beginning where you might step into it, out of it, it's not fully kind of integrated?
It's never fully integrated. Here's the secret. It's never fully integrated. But you want to look at the frequency, duration, and intensity of your triggered moments or your upset moments. Life is an ever unfolding journey, right? There's only expansion. Or, I mean, some would say you're either evolving or de-evolving. You are continually changing. You're not the same person today as you were a month ago. So it's not from an energy of, I have to get in my magnetic masculinity. I have to make sure that all these boxes are checked. That could be very normal, but that what would be more optimal would just be that sort of lighthearted curiosity and treating it like a game and treating it like, I mean, I get a lot of clients who come to me for couples coaching and I start asking them questions about each other and they don't really know. And I'm like, okay, but you know everything about every dude on your favorite sports team. And you're like studying them like it's a university degree. You got to be doing that to your wife and vice versa. You got to be studying each other, being curious about each other, constantly checking in with each other. So you're never done. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here incarnated on the planet at this time. Earth School is here to grow and evolve and have fun and have third dimensional experiences. And so I would invite anybody, especially because I work a lot with high performers, to remember that this is not from a I have to get it right place. It's from a place of self-compassion, radical accountability, and continuously revisiting yourself. So some of the tools I use, I have like a values workbook. I have an authentic alignment workbook. I have a couples workbook where they talk about their wants, needs, boundaries, and values in areas of family, leisure activities, money, division of labor, you know, things like that, sexuality, all these different areas where they can continuously, if they want, to revisit it some people like to revisit it every 2 weeks. Some people like to revisit it once a year. You know, different people have different wants, needs, boundaries, and values. But just sort of remembering that this is a blueprint that'll just make it a lot easier for you to diagnose and repair when something is wrong, because you can break down this model and you can say, okay, I feel like shit. So am I out of authentic alignment? Am I in conditioning? Is this an upper limit problem? Is this an inauthenticity problem? Or then you can start looking at yourself and breaking it down. Is this an old program of my software? Is my heart battery depleted? And what can I do to charge it? Is my emotional navigation system telling me something, either that I'm out of alignment or navigating me right to the wound so that I can heal it? You know, do I have a full tank of gas? Because if we're not fueling our body properly and we don't have enough water, we're going to be cranky, frustrated, and it's not going to matter what our partner does or what we do. That's why the energetics course that I'm creating right now is going to be the foundation that I have everybody do before anything, because we are made out of energy. We know that. That's pretty commonly accepted science. And if we are either in an energy that is very high entropy, very chaotic, very scattered, and we're not connected, we don't have, you know, we're not getting enough electricity from the wall, like, and our vehicle is not plugged in, it's not connected to the World Wide Web, and we're low on energy and there's no gas in the tank, you can't do anything. There's nothing left to give. So energy management is one of my favorite topics and sort of the foundation that any of this can be built on. But again, you can look at those different systems in your body. So is it something in my body? Is it, if you have an overburdened liver, it's going to be really hard to, have the energy to jump into your magnetic masculinity. Or if you're eating a lot of food that is very normal to eat on the planet, but suboptimal, and instead of giving you units of energy, that food is requiring units of energy and impacting your mitochondria, and you're not able to produce serotonin, which is created from your gut, you're not going to feel as happy in the relationship. So again, it's just being able to break down so that you can more quickly diagnose and repair by using this mind model that relates to something that is already very familiar to us. So it just speeds up our process. But it's just never a now you're done, congratulations.
So follow up here, because you mentioned that once you get more familiar with it, it can be easier to diagnose and repair whatever is the challenge. What would you say to anyone listening who might think that this sounds like a lot of work, and I already have been working on myself, and that in itself is a lot of work, and maybe like the thought of all this might seem overwhelming or even in some ways frustrating. How do I, similar to what you said, there's no finish line, but at the same time, that beginning can be so messy that how to deal with that, or what would be your maybe advice to men who are willing, they want to start going in or through this process, but there might be some resistance or some overwhelm that might come from it?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that's normal. Whatever is unfamiliar to us feels uncomfortable. Whatever is uncomfortable and unfamiliar feels impossible. Just like the first time the first time I tried to use Photoshop, I was like, oh, there's too many things to understand, all these layers and all this clicking this and clicking that. And that's normal when we're learning something new. So it could help to keep in mind your why. Like, why are you doing this? Well, because you want to have confidence, clarity, emotional mastery, vulnerability, sexy, fulfilling, safe, secure relationships, more money, more time in flow state. You want to experience your full potential and your juiciest connections. So keeping in mind why, staying patient and trusting the journey. I always tell clients at the beginning of our journey, especially if they're doing like a 1-year intensive with me, I'm like, you're going to get uncomfortable. You're going to feel like it's overwhelming. You're going to feel like it's never going to work. And you're going to just do it anyways, because it's going to work. And you can trust that your mind garden, you're planting seeds, you're watering seeds, they're going to grow when they're ready to grow. So having this blueprint is a lot easier than I've worked with clients who have they've meditated, they've done breath work, they've done the cold plunge, they've taken their inner child on a date, they've gone to workshops, they've gone to self-help seminars, they've read the books, they've gone to they've done it all. They've meditated every day for 10 years, whatever, and they still feel lonely, frustrated, stuck, misunderstood, and like something is missing. So I would invite them to say, okay, you might feel uncomfortable. It might be a little challenging, but you know what's worse? Is living your life in your conditioning and looking back on your life one day in your deathbed and going, oh, I wonder what could have been.
Yeah.
So I say, feel uncomfortable and do it anyways. And it may not be as hard as you think, or it may be harder than you think. I don't know, but it's going to be worth it.
So that's Magnetic Masculinity Blueprint being applied to relationships, which is literally just the beginning of what we will go into in the next episodes as well. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
And anybody listening, if you have any comments, questions about any topics we covered or any new topics, you can always comment them in show notes. There will be a link where you can click. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment there, because we love to hear your feedback. We love to get your questions so that we can address them, or maybe come up with new episodes or new topics we can cover.
Absolutely. And there will also be a link where you can book a one-to-one strategy session with me, where we map out your unique magnetic masculinity blueprint. I don't work with everybody. And I may or may not be the right coach for you. I want you to succeed, whoever you decide to work with, whatever modality works for you. But it's just a way where you're going to get a lot of value, and where we can just sort of start to explore if feeling out if that relationship, that coaching relationship, is mutually beneficial for us, and if we're a good fit. And if nothing else, you're going to get a ton of value and see what it's like to, Matt, see what you can do in 30 or 60 minutes, one-to-one with me.
Yeah, and next week we're talking about authentic alignment in relationships.
Yeah.
So we'll see you then.
See you then. Bye for now.